when we're considering the thought and the idea of community and the West African philosophy or West African calculation, the community does not just exist of those of us who live in the third dimension or within the realm of, the five senses. The community is also the spirits, but beyond the spirits of various entities and the plant kingdom and the human kingdom, we also have ancestors. So it is always understood that energy never really totally leaves a place unless you desire it to leave a place. Okay, this is why in many traditions, not just ancient traditions, but you go to certain places, if there is someone who has committed a certain atrocity, it is made clear to those members of that community that person's name is not to be mentioned. Okay? Because it is by giving power through your breath, through your speech, that you make something real, that you make something authentic. Okay? By giving it your attention, it becomes real. Well, how did you develop this ability to make things real? Just by speaking to them, or just by mentioning a word, mentioning a name, or giving it your attention. Okay, it is your breath, not just your biological breath, but it's what we call divine breath. In this tradition, we have a name for it, and that name is Emi, E-M-I, Emi. Okay, and many other traditions, this is idea of breath. Okay, whether it's Hindi, whether it's Kemetic or Egyptian, or even in the Christian law, where you have this power of breath being breathed into something, and that thing now becoming real. Okay, so there is an effective power that we all possess, and that effective power is because of the fact that we have divine breath, and the divine breath is what animates your soul. It's what gives you your soul. So the question would also be, is it possible for someone to only have no frills breath, run-of-the-mill breath? Does everyone have divine breath? No. Some do not. These are people who we would consider to be soulless. It is the soul that gives you that power of creation, that allows you to step into the shoes in the place of the Creator. Okay? So by speaking to certain things, speaking to certain movements, we're able to sustain the ecosystem of our communities, the spiritual ecosystems of our community, just by speaking to them. Okay? By coming into this place and me mentioning certain cosmic archetypes' names, it brings power to them. And in fact, it is an honor for me to do that. Okay? But the honor is not mine. When I speak the name of a God, I bring honor to that God, not the other way around. We think by speaking the name of God or speaking the name of a cosmic archetype, we're making ourselves better. But in fact, we're animating and enlivening that particular spirit or that particular energy by us speaking it. Why? Because we have divine breath. And these concepts and notions of gods and spirits that we have in this day, man created. Divine did not create that. We needed that so we wouldn't be lonely anymore. So we created gods. We couldn't understand totally the science of certain elements. So what we did was we put a face on those elements. What is the water called when it hits the shore and it foams up? Do we have a name for that? Yeah, there's a God just for that. There's a God for moist air. There's a God for cold air. There's a God for fresh water. There's a God for salt water. There's a God for waterfalls. There's a God for everything. We itemize everything in our ancient traditions to help us to understand everything. And by us mentioning the names of these various archetypes, which is a better word to use other than God, by mentioning the names of these various archetypes, we were allowed, or we helped to sustain the evolutionary process of the cosmos, just by word power. Okay? So there is value in what you say. There is value in the breath and the moisture that leaves your mouth, as spoken by your tongue, which is your sword. When we speak about the sword of God, okay? The sword of God is your tongue. And that tongue sits in water all day. Okay, it's your mouth, it's your saliva. It's a very powerful thing. Now, how does this bring us to ideas and notions of self-actualization, and what does that have to do with the cosmic forces of West Africa? We're souls trapped in this cage of humanity. Because there's only one way you can trap a God. Only one way. Forget the genies and the bottles and all of those are not gods anyway. Those are just butlers. The only way you can trap a God is by making it human. That's it. That's how you trap God. Okay? You make it live out the Lucifer story. You make it be light, Lucifer, and you make it fall to the earth and fall into darkness, which we call melanin. And then you make it have to go through the corruption and struggle of humanity to rise up again and to be a better God. Okay? So your humanity is your prison. And there are different levels of humanity. There are different, what we call matrix of humanity. So we understand the paradigm of this matrix is a contrived reality. The matrix is a reality where everything that you do, you say, everything that you perform is just really a series of multiple choices that has been put in front of you. Even when you think you're making free will decisions, they're actually still on the grid. Okay, you're still coloring inside the lines. And this has been architected or designed by who we would call the fallen elders. Okay? So this is the whole premise of the movie The Matrix. And of course there were many other movies similar to this, but they may have expressed it in a different way, this artificial reality. Okay? And how we move within an artificial reality and then extract ourselves from it. Okay? Many of us who pursue higher information, higher awareness, elevated awareness, we consider ourselves to be out of the matrix, or at least clawing our way out of it, trying to get out of it. But we can clearly see the difference between those who are completely enamored and in love with the artificial reality, as opposed to those who have realized that it is contrived. For instance, there was a scene with Cypher when he was sitting at the table with the agents, and he was eating the steak. And he said, I know this is not real. I know this is just sending signals to my brain, but oh, it's so good. And he wanted to be put back into the matrix. All right? Remember that scene. Now, of course, if you notice all throughout the movie, Cypher always wore a piece of red. And of course, Cypher, we know that he represented Lucifer in that movie. Okay? Who was one of the twins of Neo. That's why when Neo first came into the room, he said, when he first saw him, oh, you scared the bejesus out of me. Well, who he was saying was Bar Jesus. Bar Jesus was considered to be the twin brother of Jesus. But again, that movie was about the matrix and unplugging from the matrix and the reality of that, right? And we got that idea with the Bar Jesus and everything, and Neo was the one and he was the redeemer. But the matrix was still at work, even when you were trying to understand the deepness of that movie. Because the movie led you to believe that Neo was the one when it was really Morpheus. He was the one who brought transformation to everyone. And even the Oracle said, it ain't you, kid, but we need Morpheus to believe in you. Go back and watch the movie. So there's some power in belief. But there's power in belief in a deity or a savior, and then there's power in the day when you kill that savior, which is your goal. So let's look at this concept of the matrix for a moment. And we're dealing with self-actualization here. We have this assumption that there's an artificial reality and there's a real reality, right? There's what's real and then there's what's fake. But what if the matrix were multi-layered? So what if after you extract yourself from that artificial reality and you go into the reality of the world of the real, or as Morpheus said in the movie, welcome to the desert of the real. What was the most deep thing about that? It's the fact that they were still inside of a simulator when he said it. So he wasn't in the desert of the real. He was only seeing a reflection of it. In fact, humans couldn't even be in the real anymore because the Earth's atmosphere had been destroyed. So they never were able to touch that realm again of what was real. So, for those of you who believe you've extracted yourself from a false reality, I am here to tell you today that you are still inside of the matrix and still inside of the false reality. You are still locked into the grid, and even your movements to get free were pre-orchestrated by the fallen elders. In West Africa, you have, again, these concepts of the Orisha. Ori is head or consciousness. Sa means to select. Okay? So your Ori is you. That is your core self, your essence, your aura, your personality, your destiny, your soul, consciousness, your mind, your body. This is the Ori, as we call it, O-R-I. But then you have the Orisha, which gives you identity to be, if you so choose. Because Ori, just like God, has no personality. God is boring. That's why all God can do is make perfection. All God can do is kill you. Because perfection is death. But then he has these Orisha, these colors. They have all these different personalities. Some Orisha are just over love. Some are over militancy and warfare. Some are just over opportunities. Some are over space. You have Orisha that just govern space between objects. And then you have ones that govern the joining of objects, like Oshun. Okay? Or acid, or boom. See? Or circumspection, Shango. Okay, we have so many different Orisha. Yemoja, the energy of salt water. She governs the concept of instantaneous healing. Okay? We have everything itemized in our matrix of the Orisha. Now, the challenge and the problem that we have in this tradition and many other traditions is that once we're introduced to these beings who are manifesting on a higher level than we are in our human bodies, the first thing we want to do is to strive to become them. We get initiated into their mysteries, we wear their clothes, we wear their beads, so forth and so on, without realizing we are now initiating into another matrix. Because you're initiating into a spirit's world who you're actually older than. So let's try this again. If you are Ori, you're the center, and the Orisha are selected consciousness, if there's something that you would select and use and they're just tools, they're just butlers, they're just genies, that's all. So then you created them. You're older than them. Your soul is much older than the Orisha spirits. The Orisha are spirits who live on the astral planes. And I'm using the term Orisha, but I want you to certainly make it interchangeable with angels, with Netir, or Netiru, Devi, okay, Lawao, and Kisi. So when you understand this concept, you understand that these were tools that you used. Why? Because at your core and at your center, you have no character. There's nothing cool about you. There's nothing funny about you. There's nothing bad about you either. There's nothing evil. All you are is will at your core. And will needs a vehicle to figure out which way it wants to go. That's where the angels and the Orisha come in. But now, what don't the Orisha have? Will. They can't change anything. They're vibrating on a certain frequency, just like colors vibrate on a frequency. Okay? This has been measured scientifically. Each color has its own frequency that it pulsates at. Okay? Now, they're unable to change frequencies. However, because you are an independent phenomenon, you can. I can be a teacher right now, and then I could go somewhere right after this and have a bar brawl, if I so choose. I can choose to do that. Or I can just walk down the street and hand people flowers, if I so choose to do that. I can do whatever I feel like doing. Because my energy is in motion, whatever my emotions lead me to do. But when I'm striving to be an archetype, I'm striving to be like Buddha. I'm striving to be like Christ. I'm striving to be like Krishna. I'm striving to be like Shango. I'm striving to be like Martin Luther King. I'm striving to be like Muhammad Ali. When I'm striving to be these archetypes, I'm striving to re-enslave myself into a prison of another matrix. Yeah, I know. I could just be crazy. I could just be crazy. Could have just came here and listened to a crazy man ranting. Maybe. But you know you did. These are matrix and ideas and forms that you have created so that you can understand the cosmos better. Okay? They're supposed to be broken into and broken out of. You're supposed to birth yourself into these realities and then kill yourself out of those realities. That's the only escape from a matrix. It's death. That's the only way you can escape from a matrix. You can't escape a matrix through books. You can't escape the matrix through learning natural law or constitutional law. You can't escape the matrix through a living diet and vegan eating or yoga or deep breathing exercises. It's not enough. You have to die. You have to die. But you have to kill every single relationship that you have in your life in order to leave a matrix. Because every single relationship that you have is an agreement. How I look, how you look, is an agreement. And in order to leave that matrix, the agreements have to be broken. They have to be severed. Those agreements are your relationships. Whether it's my relationship to my hair, okay, so your hair's growing. There was a relationship there, but more importantly, there was an identity that was associated with that. Some of you who are here have only ever seen me with the long locks. That was the identity you knew. Oh, the guy here looks like a Rasta guy. That was an identity that I had to get rid of. So now whenever I walk by a Rasta, I won't get this blessing guy. It feels so good when you get that. Bless King. I get called a king, I get bowed to. That's going, I have to give that up now. Now I'm just a bald head. I had to kill that relationship with what I consider to be glory. Glory is the enamoring that we have with our intellect. Okay, there's a Sephiroth on the tree of life called Hod, where our Orisha Eshu or Elegba lives. And it's the glory of intelligence, the glory of what our mind has been able to create, which is these contracts that we're talking about. The contracts that I think I have with the cosmos, the contracts that I think I have even with my family, the stock that I have put into my child. It keeps me locked into this matrix. And the only way you can divest from it and leave it totally is to kill each and every one of those thoughts. I know that's a tough thing to swallow if you choose to. You may not. You may say, no, I like it here. I know the state is not real, but I like it. I know the air isn't real, but I like it. It's comfortable here. I feel safe here in the bosom of this gigantic factory. I don't want free will. I don't want freedom. I don't want a free mind. I'm not interested in that. I like to work by automatic grid. I'm cool with the grid. Leave me and my grid alone. Okay, but let's look at actualization for a moment. Self-actualization, if we just now understood that the self is the consciousness, and it really is, it's beyond the self, beyond the consciousness. Your consciousness is only a reflection of your higher self, but it's not the higher self. We've realized the self is actually that higher entity, but that which observes thought, but more importantly, that which controls thought, okay? Actualizing them. That's another key piece. In Archimedes studies, or Egyptian, the region known that we know as Egypt, is actually the region that the Yoruba, where we get these West African ideas, where they migrated from. So a lot of the ideas are very similar between the two cultures. But in this particular region, we had a deity or an archetype known as Ma'at, spelled M-A'-A-T. Sometimes you see it spelled as M-A-Y-A-T. Ma'at. And Ma'at represented a certain set of values and a certain set of principles, which I won't really get into right now. More importantly, Ma'at's name meant that which is real. We don't really talk about that part of Ma'at, you know. Her name actually means authentic. Her husband was an archetype by the name of Tahuti. Okay? And our Yoruba West African system, this is who we call Orumila. In our biblical system, this is who we call Moses. Okay? In our now system, this is who we call John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, Chuck D. Okay? These were the people who brought the law to us. Because before John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben, we didn't know what Egyptians really looked like. We weren't even talking about Egypt. Okay? They came and brought law and said, listen, let me tell you, bring you something from on high. Look at these tablets. Book of the day, or the book coming forth by day. So, Tahuti gives us words of power. Okay? Ma'at means what is real and authentic. But Tahuti has a book. And in this book, he was being asked certain questions. And he was saying basically that this life is a dream. And the person said, well, is not the tree real? Are not my children real? Is not my wife real? Is not this home real? And Tahuti said, no. So he said, then what is real? Tahuti says, the soul. Only thing that is real is the soul. All other things are temporal. They fade away. They will be gone. Your soul is the only real thing. So self-actualization is actualizing the mission and idea of the soul. Not so much as expression, as we said earlier, but it's mission and idea. When you are tuning into the frequency of these higher beings that we love so much, these Orisha, these angels, who we call our gods, our prophets, what you are doing is you're tuning into someone's radio frequency, right? Okay, that's what we say. We want to get into the frequency. Sometimes we'll even do mantras with certain tones, so we can align ourselves even with the frequency of the earth. Om is the tone. Om aligns you with the awakening of the planet. That's what it sounds like. There's two tones that we found out that represent the constant frequency, that 8 kilohertz of the planet, that's Om. And when the planet wakes up, it goes Hum. Hum. H-U-N. That is the ancient sound of the awakening of the earth. Anybody know that? Okay. But you didn't know. Because I've been hearing it the whole time I've been speaking. Every time I say something that people find profound in the room, I keep hearing, you've been doing it the whole time, you didn't even realize it. That is the awakening up of your planet. Okay? Changing up the orbit, changing up the speed. Okay? Maybe even the angle a little bit. Because as long as you're tuning into someone else's frequency, you're a victim to their multiple choice reality. No matter how divine, no matter how beautiful and glorious that you think they are, you're still a victim to their reality. And each Orisha, each angel, each archetype, each deity that we can imagine or think of has a heaven and has a hell. There's polarities. So you get trapped and stuck in their polarities. For instance, if we look at the archetype Ogun, this is the energy, his color is red. Red, black, and green actually, but red is the ancient color. Okay, and then black was because he's a blacksmith, it represents the cauldron. And green because he's a deity of agriculture, but the red is for the blood. Okay, now, his heaven is a very serene environment where he's able to be left alone to create. He loves isolation, and he charts new paths and new roads. Okay, he just goes to the woods with his machete and a cigar, cutting, charting. He's a trailblazer. He loves cutting new road. His hell is ceaseless warring, violence, insanity. Okay, more specifically, he represents the cosmic force of acid. He's an analyzer. He breaks things down. That's what the machetes represent. He's constantly breaking things down. So your goal is not to become Yemoja. You're not supposed to become Ogun. You're not supposed to become Oshun. You're supposed to understand them, use them, and study them as nothing but formulas for the universe. And formulas for you to now create your own music, your own song, which it should sound like nothing we've ever heard before. That is how you come into your deityhood, or your deityship. In this tradition, we have acknowledgement of the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, and then we're really 5, the center. In the north, we acknowledge that this is the energy of air. The south, we have the energy of earth. East, we have the energy of fire. And in the west, we have water. In the north, what air represents for us is not only intellect, but heaven. If you want to use that term. Some might use the term the fifth dimension. But the unseen reality. And we've always understood that the unseen reality is the reality that governs all realities. Traditionally, heaven was also called the underworld. So the overworld and the underworld was heaven. Not just something you went to at a later time, but something that you have to be at all day. Because if you're not operating from your heavenly center, you're only operating from the plastic world of the matrix. Jimi Hendrix used to talk about this a lot. About really coming to what is real, the real experience. Or do you want to just walk around in your plastic suit all day? It's not real. Okay? So in the north, we have the seeds from heaven, or the spiritual subcontext. In the south, we have the energy of transformation, where we have Yemoja. North is air, and in the north lives Shango. S-A-N-G-O. Shango offered his name so graciously to 3 dynasties in China, the Shang dynasties. He got the name from Shango. He even offered his name to an ancient ancestral dance, but then it was changed. They took one letter out so you wouldn't know, and they put a T where the S was. And now they call it the tango. In the east, we have the element of fire. South is earth, Yemoja. So in the east, we have Obatala. Obatala, king of the white cloth. The new day and light, the new day. In the west, we have Oshun, bringing you the energy of water. More specifically, nurturing and death. East you have life, in the west you have death. But death is nothing but a new beginning. Death within itself is a resurrection. And that's so important for those of us who sometimes sit back and question and ask ourselves, why are we still here on this landmass in North America when there's so many other beautiful places to be and to travel to? Why stay here? Well, in Egyptian or Kemetic culture, we were told that Osiris, he would resurrect in the west. This is where the final showdown is going to happen between your humanity and your soul, for you to make the final decision. Where do I want to be? What do I want to be? Consciousness is here. Not only does each realm have a heaven and hell, each realm exists within its own matrix. So there are people who live nothing but a Shango life. There are people who live nothing but an Oshun life, or an Obatala life. And how would that be classified? Well, let's look at the north. When we're falling from the north and we're dealing with nothing but the unseen reality, we have not materialized yet in the physical world. Now you have disincarnate spirits who fight all day to materialize in the spiritual world. Vampires. Okay? What is a vampire's whole mission? To come back to this world again. And what does it need to come back to this world? A vehicle of travel. Plasma. Blood. Okay? But now, what's more important than that, you have to understand something. Self-actualizing people can feed a vampire with their spirit by giving them spiritual attention. Vampires drink what? Blood, also known as plasma. Plasma is also a substance that moves through the universe. Okay, scientists look at it. You know, they mark it. And they've noticed that it always moves in the same exact shape throughout the universe. A spiral. Very similar to the Milky Way. Milky Way is just a bunch of stars that move in a spiral with each other. Right? But it moves in a spiral. Now, spiral, very interesting here, because the word spiral and the word spirit are actually one and the same. They come from the exact same root. And at one point in time, they were interchangeable. Spiral and spirit. So plasma is spirit, like we learn even in our Christian studies, that life is in the blood. The life is in the blood. That's why when Christ resurrected and came back, they looked inside, there was no blood in there. There was still the mark from the spirit, but no blood. The life is in the blood. The energy is in the blood. Okay, this is very critical here. The life and the energy is in the blood, and vampires use that to feed off of. And those who are self-actualizing, they have spirit in their rivers of life, in their blood, and the spirit just comes off the body. Some call it an aura. Some call it the OGG, the electromagnetic body.
Isn't the same thing as prana?
Prana, no, prana is different, because prana is your active force. Okay, prana moves outward. And this duality, in this world of duality, we have push, we have things that go out, like prana, and then we also have rama. And then we have things that stay in and are okay by themselves. Prana is a masculine energy. Prana goes out. It's power, it's force that goes out. Okay? This is when you understand the joining of Shiva and Shakti. Now we're going into a different tradition, but so it's the push-pull. Now most of us here, we're full of prana. We're full of prana. We're full of yang energy because we believe that this is where it's happening. This is where it's happening. Okay? We look outside, so it's a lovely day outside. We look at a stream, this is beautiful, a mountain. We look at our own faces, oh my goodness, you know, I'm da 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 da. Everything here is disgusting. Everything here is dying. Everything here is corrupted. Everything, even your beautiful sunset, is a corruption of the real sunset. Why? What did Oshun tell you? Oshun, she looks at the mirror all day and she laughs. Why is she laughing? Because they really think what's in the mirror is real. This is hilarious. That's why she's laughing at you. Because this is a holographic universe. They even wrote a beautiful story about it, called Snow White. In that story, she says, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Why would you ask a mirror that? What can a mirror tell you about your reality when a mirror exists within a false reality? That's why Oshun looks at the mirror playing with it and laughing at you. Okay, so why would a human destroy the gods? Okay, this is probably a critical thing. And it takes us right back to our Orisha tradition and even our idea of the vampire. In many traditions, and not just spiritual traditions, cultural traditions, you have these instances of not only possessions, where you'll have entities that try to attach themselves to an individual. They want to, whether they fall in love with them or whether they are attacking them, but they clearly want to be attached. What's happening in this moment is that entity has a desire for transformation. It has been given enough energy to have a will, a little bit of a will. But its will says, I no longer want to exist only on the astral planes. Spirits, your conceptualization of a god, Orisha, angels, so forth and so on, live in one realm. It's called the astral. Okay, you go there every night when you go to sleep. And it also governs that western quadrant, the west, where you have death and transformation. That is the world of dreaming, of dreams. Now, something important for you to know about a dream. When you're sleeping, you're actually, or you're resting, your dreams don't occur until the last few moments of your actual sleep cycle. Because sleep occurs in cycles. It's not just you lay down and it's the same thing straight and then you're dreaming and you wake up. There's a cycle of going between various forms where your brain waves are changing. Okay? And it gets longer, then it gets shorter, then it gets shorter. And then what happens towards the last stages of this on and off cycle, you begin to dream. Okay? That's why when we wake up from dream, it's usually morning time. Okay? The purpose of a dream, biologically, is to awaken the subject. Let's just go somewhere for a moment. Just for a moment. Let's just say all of this was a dream. If the body conjures up a dream in order to awaken the body, well, what if the soul conjured this dream? What would we be awakening to? I know, it's just let it sit for a while. You probably can't answer it right away, but I just want you to hold the question and let it live with you today for a little bit. Because we're talking about biology now. We're not talking about any deep spiritual stuff. You dream in order to wake up. So if this is a false reality filled with dreams, what are you waking up to? And who and what is controlling the cycles, the sleep cycles? Dealing with the idea of waking up, transformation, and resurrection. In this tradition, I spoke to you about the 4 cardinal points. Well, there is also another energy that exists at those 4 cardinal points, and it's called the energy of the Egun, which is different from Egun. The Yoruba language is very tonal. Egun means vulture. Vulture. Okay, so there are 4 vultures, as it is said, that exist at the cardinal points that surround the world, watching the world. Doing what? Obviously the most important thing, right? These vultures represent the energy of the Aj, or who we call the Iyami Oshoronga, or who we called in Egypt the Wajet, or the Uajet, or who we call today the witch. The witches, or the earth mothers. Okay, the earth mothers. Because it is through the tomb of the womb that you're transformed. That's why in Hindi culture, a man, when he allows himself to fully express inside of a woman, it's called the small death. Because that death transforms you. Well, those same vultures representing those witch energy, or that feminine energy, is the death that we all need in order to remove ourselves from our current matrix. Your current matrix is an artificial design that exists outside of your yin, or your female energy, or your real energy. Okay? It's a matrix that exists outside of that polarity. Well, it will take only one thing to destroy the walls of that reality. That's the yin energy again. But we called it the witches. Now, why was a witch so scary in tradition? The witches were so scary because they were independent phenomena. They were not subject to Orisha. They were not subject to the laws of the cosmos. They were not subject to anything other than their own will. There's an old, in this tradition we have what's called patakis. And patakis are like scriptures. They're a corpus of scriptures, of information that tells you not only about the tradition, but it has different stories about the different Orisha and the archetypes and the culture itself. And there's an ancient pataki that speaks about the day when the witches lost control. Okay? And we see this mirrored in our Egyptian studies. If you study pre-dynastic Egypt, there's something interesting that you'll find. You'll find this heavy proliferation of female archetypes. More than Ma'at, more than Orset, more than Sekhmet, more than Nephthys, more than Seshat. It was the majority of the archetypes were actually female. Then there was a split. There was a time when then there was proliferation of male archetypes. Okay? As above, so below, right? We know that. Star of Dawood, as above, so below, which is also the seal of Solomon. What does that mean? That means the earth will always reflect the heavens, and the heavens will always reflect the earth. So there was a time that the female energy was strong in terms of our spiritual understanding, and then that was one day taken over, and now we have mainly all these male gods that we always refer to. That not only reflected a change in the heavens in terms of the shifting of polarities, but it also represented the change in that culture where we now came into a more patriarchal paradigm. Okay, it always stayed matrilineal, but there was a time when there was matriarchal societies. Okay, but in order to prepare for the onslaught of a new invader, the men had to step forward. So now, in Yoruba country, we have the same thing. It's very interesting. There was a time period when the Iyami, the mothers, Iya means mother, Mi means mine. So Iyami is my mother. Okay, the Iyami, or the witches, they were tired of the rule of patriarchy, and they felt that the men were not treating the women fairly. So the Aj were pushing for womanism. But at that time, the men were deaf, dumb, and blind to that information, or to that idea. And this is all documented, okay? So the RJ said, okay, then we're going to show you what oppression is, and we're going to bring children of the moon to this land to oppress you. Okay? Now, this was before the 1600s. Anybody know what we're talking about here? Some do. We're talking about the African Holocaust, the Ma'afa. It was actually the witches, as documented in Yoruba culture, who actually brought the invaders to the land to enslave everyone, to show the men what slavery could really be. Okay? So we speak about the independent phenomenon of self-actualization. You know, no rules. I'm going to do what I need to do, but I'm also going to show you the depth of my power. Because the witches devour the paradigms that currently exist for the new paradigm to come forth. That's what a vulture does. It feeds off of what is fermented and dead. Okay? And one of the things that we as self-actualizing people have to see and recognize is that this reality is fermented and rotten. And it's a glorious thing. It needs to be rotten, because out of mold and ferment and rot comes what?
Fruit. It bears fruit or
Bears fruit. Life.
life. Okay.
Certainly not death, right?
Yeah.
In order for new life to come, the old life has to rot. So sometimes we look at the news, or we look outside of society, and we're so hurt. As spiritual people, we're so bothered by it. You know, we need to do something about this. We need to fix this. We need to go to war about this. And you don't realize that it has to get extremely bad for you to get extremely good. It has to. Sorry. You can't rise back up to the glory of yourself as a God without a complete shedding of your humanity. So when you look outside, what do you see? Inhumane acts happening every minute of the day. There's a complete loss of humanity on the planet. A complete loss. Well, the other polarity is now that a rising of deityship has to happen and occur because of that. The Iyami have also been symbolized by the snake, or what we call the Naga in Hindu culture, okay? Or the Nagus. There's some other words, but let's say that. But the Naga, right, this snake, not only represented the shedding of the skin, shedding of the old, but it also represented the rising of the Kundalini energy, okay? That's why that snake was such a prominent theme in culture. But let's think and look at the snake for a moment. When you look at a snake, you know, especially a very large snake, right? The bulk and the girth of most of its body is in the coil. The smallest part is that head sticking out. But most of it is the body. So let's ask ourselves for a second if we could actually imagine the body of the snake, which is coiled, representing the masses. And just for another second on top of that, if we could imagine the head of the snake representing those who are consciously aware and elevated. Well, the head can do something. The head can go back to the body and preach to the body. Just like, I know I have a big head, but my body is much bigger than my big head that's on my shoulders. So when it's time for me to move, I don't go and tell my feet, come on feet, let's move. Or my stomach, let's get out of here. What do? I think it, and then I do it. And then what happens to the feet, and the legs, and the arms, and the heart? It has to. It might not even comply, but it has to. So the masses are in the coil, and the consciously aware are in the head. Then the job of the consciously aware should not be to preach to the masses and to tell them the goodness of, have you heard the good news? You know, the Shango has arrived. Come and join the church of Shango. No, that's not your job. The job of those who are on the head of the snake is to move and elevate and ascend, and more importantly, evolve. Evolve. Notice the word Eve in there. It's like an evening Evolve. And when the head evolves, the body has to come along, whether it wants to or not. So many people had a problem with Martin Luther King. So many people. He's a communist, he's a sellout, his politics are weak, nonviolence, all that jazz, right? But because of what he did, even those who were complaining would now even go through the front door and drink from a better water fountain, you know? Whether you liked him or not, because he decided to evolve the perspective. And we're subtracting maybe even his political views or his familial views. Because he decided to evolve the perspective, whether we liked it or not, we now are in a new paradigm that he drove us along to. Because everything that's true in nature comes in or leaves from a circle. Everything that is true in nature is also birthed or died by the four elements. Fire, water, air, earth. That's how we all leave this planet, in one shape, form, or another. By those four elements. Okay? We have our zodiacal wheel, which has how many zodiacs? 12, correct? Which is the number of completion. And these 12 zodiacal signs, like we say, like for instance, I'm an Aquarius, right? Now, an Aquarius has certain attributes that attribute to an Aquarius, right? So probably now that I've said I'm an Aquarius, some of you may say, oh yeah, because he's got that this, and he acts like this, and whatever it is that they're now saying about Aquarius. I don't know all the things. But what's more importantly is that I have to tell you, no, my body was born as an Aquarius. I'm not an Aquarius. You know, my mother said, even though she still calls me an Aquarian baby, I'm not an Aquarius. My body was born as an Aquarius. I've been out of Aquarius. I had to be out of Aquarius. Because as a child, I didn't like talking. I mumbled all the time. I was very shy as a child. But then when I started coming into a certain level of information and realized that, wow, people listen to me when I speak. And this deep voice that my brother used to pick on me for all the time, it actually makes people listen because I can wake them up with it. I got this for something. Not to sit here and mumble, but to do something with it. But my Aquarian nature doesn't want to do it. I want to save the world, but I kind of want to be detached into myself. So I have to look on the other side of that zodiacal chart at Leo. If I had some of that coming in the room, I'm here. You know, if I had some of that, then I could stand in front of people and I wouldn't feel insecure and I wouldn't feel shy and so forth and so on. So what did I do? I just picked this I'm a Leo now. And then when I'm done with this workshop, I'm going to go back to something else. Maybe I'll be a Pisces and I'll walk down the block crying. I don't know. You know. But we pick and choose what we need. Right? Going around that zodiacal tree. And eventually what you want to be is the 13th. Just like the apostles or the disciples, coming from the word disciplines, the 12 disciplines wanted to be the 13th discipline, which was Christ. The one who went to the center of the cross. Okay? Because he said, you know what? Don't keep telling me I have to choose left or right, up or down. That's the choices and the duality of humanity. You know what? I'm going to go through the middle of the cross. Forget all the stuff you're talking about. We have an Orisha in our tradition called Eshu. He does the same thing. Here they call him Legba. Or Legba. It's an amazing song written by an artist by the name of Robert Johnson called Crossroad Blues. You should all take a listen to it. And he speaks about an interaction he had with Legba, or Ilegba. Okay? But Ilegba's original name in Nigeria was Eshu. E-S-U. It's so amazing because if you put a J in the front of it and an S on the back of it, you have Jesus. Everybody can get some of this Jesus. But Jesus, or Eshu, says, I'm going to go through the center of the cross. Forget these decisions you're talking about, because I no longer care about this reality. I no longer even care about the multiple choices that you're giving me. So I don't have to choose left or right, good or bad, up or down, male or female, whatever. I'm going to the center. Okay? So the same thing in your zodiacal wheel. The key is to be the 13th zodiac. Not of Yuya, but to be that zodiac where you say, I'm all of them now. So now because I've become all of them, I don't need any of them. And I'm going to go through the center of that will, self-actual. So real quick, this is an exercise that I gave you all for you to work on, if you so choose, because it's all about free will choice. And it's a movement towards self using the 4 cardinal directions and the energies that they actually represent. Very easy to ritualize this. And there's a couple of questions that I asked. How would one initiate into the paradigm and energy matrix of the various archetypes? For instance, if I wanted to be like an Oshun, how would I become Oshun? If I wanted to be a better warrior, how would I become a better warrior? If I want to stop procrastinating, how would I do that? Because all of these things are different realms. Procrastination itself is another world. It creates a whole different world reality for you. How would one leave their current paradigm that they're in? It is only through death that we are able to graduate into the next realm. Covered that. It is the final moment of no longer holding concern for your current world reality or occurrences that you've reached the final level. What does that mean? Simple statement. 3 words. Just 3 beautiful words. I said them all the time when I was a child. I don't care. That's it. I don't care. Wow. It's tough, right? Right when you get to that point, I don't care, I'm totally detached from this reality, I'm totally detached from this world, I'm just focusing on my higher self and leaving this reality. Trayvon Martin. Now say it. See the challenge? And then even when you could say, well, kids die every day, and the conscious ego, Satan, will do something real interesting. It will say, well, wait a minute. He was going to get some Skittles. What is the slogan for Skittles?
Taste the rainbow.
Taste the rainbow. Taste the rainbow. Now, when we study the Babylonian language, we find that the word Trayvon means rainbow. And then we find out that Mars was the prominent planet on that day that he was killed. And the metal that's associated with the planet Mars is tin. Martin. Rainbow Martin. And see how we got, see what happened? Everybody does it. See how we got right back into it? But we weren't supposed to care. But somebody orchestrated the death, because we also know that Skittles is owned by which company?
Mars.
The Mars Candy Company. What the heck is going on here? Right? Now we're on our conspiracy stuff. And now we're caring about this paradigm again. And that's how you're always tricked back into caring. It's either through your corruption or it's through your ecstasy that you stay attached to this reality and then you never make it back home. And, well, all frequencies you're actually projecting, you just don't realize it.
Okay.
It's your lower self project. Your job is to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's to find the middle point of the frequency.
So that you're not swayed by either one.
The gray area. Because they're your own, remember, whether we're talking about an angel or an Orisha, like I said, it's a projection. You're projecting. These are thought forms that exist inside of you. My Ogun is not your Ogun. I told you Ogun is acid. You might say Ogun is the police force. Okay, for you, yeah, he's militancy. That makes sense. Okay, but not for me, really. It's your projection. Just like this dialogue that you and I are having is a projection in a contractual agreement that we made who knows when, because our souls have no concept of time. We're just slowly catching up to it. I already know you, and you already know me. It's all a contract. So at some point, the artist says, you know what, I know I have a contract, but I'm not producing any more music for you guys. I'm not creating anything else for you. I don't care what you do. And then the walls of the reality begin to crumble. What are signs of the walls of that reality begin to crumble? Divorce. I lost my job. I lost my place. My children aren't talking to me. I lost weight, or I gained weight, or I just look different. I cut my hair off. The walls of my reality are crumbling. Everything that I knew as being the static pieces of my world and my identity are leaving. And then what do we start doing? We pick up the rubble and we create a museum of our fractured lives. We just like Trayvon's gone. He's out of here. Okay? He's on Mars. Home of the Zulu. The word Zulu, KwaZulu, means people from Mars. He's gone. But we still want to figure out this mystery. We want to hold the spirit here. You see? So that middle point is when you get the corrupted information and then you compare, like, I heard what happened, so my corruption was my lower order thinking, down below my waistline. I wanted to kill it. Okay? Because that's how I felt. This little boy, wow. So I had murderous thoughts, like this isn't, someone needs to do this to him. Murder. But then my other side said, wait a minute, what day did this happen? What planet was that? What's this boy's name? Was something else happening here? And then I go between two of those feelings, and then I come into the gray area where, I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm not wearing a shirt. I don't really care that much, to be honest with you. It may sound bad, but I don't really care that much. I know it's rough going. Because the Jegna is supposed to be out there and chasing down every flame that the soulless thought projections throw in front of me to chase. But if this world is an illusion and nothing is real, then Trayvon never got killed anyway.
1 minute you said Martin Luther King led us whether we wanted it or not.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going on.
That's right.
Here we go.
Right.
So if he didn't care and feel the pain,
Sure.
then how would he have ever been able to rise to the occasion to make the body follow?
Exactly.
Even when they didn't want to.
Excellent question. Who says he did it for you? Martin Luther King was a beautiful man. He always had really expensive suits he used to wear, because I used to wash his suits. He was real handsome. His wife was incredibly beautiful. Okay? This was a man who was into himself to some degree. How do you know he didn't just do it because he felt an urge in his own spirit that this is something I need to do and get done? His spiritual ego said, this is your mission on the planet, Martin. And regardless of how many people disagree with that mission, doesn't matter, because it's your mission. Because maybe if he cared so much, he would have stopped. He put his whole family at risk.
But he did change.
He did change, but he made change because he focused on his mission, not the needs of the masses. Right now, do you think I'm up here speaking because I have an incredible, overwhelming love for everyone in the room? I even look like I have. I didn't come in and say, peace. Everyone is so beautiful, and I see you always. I just feel that the room is such a vibration. I get it for you, brother. I feel such a vibration. No. I'm here because this is my trap as a God, this prison of humanity, and if I don't fulfill my purpose, I have to come back to this rat hole. And I don't want to wake up in a crappy diaper. I don't go to sleep one day and wake up in a crappy diaper. Then I have to do this again. So I'm up here with my paper and my thing here, and I'm talking, because I don't want to come back here. So I'm obedient, and I'm shackled, and I'm a slave to my life's purpose. Now, because of that, people get the benefit. If I rise and be the son of man, of Solomon, if I be the son that I was born to be, the son does what? It sustains life on the planet. Whether it wants to or not, it sustains life on the planet. So whether I want to or not, when I rise to my purpose and be that most high, or that son of man, or the actualization of my first eye, which is really the son of man, that's Solomon right there. When I'm that, then I shine light on everyone, and everyone gets the benefit. Just because I fulfilled my purpose. Even if my purpose was learning how to catch butterflies, or being a dog catcher, it doesn't matter. Somebody's still going to benefit. And if everybody is in that groove and on one accord with their own frequency and purpose, everybody benefits. So that's the deal with Martin Luther King. Okay? He was doing what he was called to do.
So how is it that he find this frequency and purpose?
The first thing is acknowledging what we covered in the first part. is that your aspirations towards what scripture or what mythology or folklore tells you as being these higher manifesting beings means that you're going to miss that purpose. You're going to miss your own frequency. There's stair steps. So at one point you become, the Christ, you become Christian, you do all these things, but you got to understand that you're climbing the steps, and that has to die. Okay? So understanding what I have here helps you to understand when you're in each realm. Okay, for instance, if you're in a realm like I just came and said, and I'm feeling the vibrations and all this, and I'm like, MS, I'm in a realm of air. And that everything that I'm saying, doing, and thinking is not actually practical. It's not on the ground. It's not in using that foot chakra. It's not in the south region. So I got a problem. If I go down to the south region and all I want to do is work all the time, and all I want to do is have riches on the planet, and constantly, I got so many blessings, and I want to invest in all my blessings, and God has been so good to me, I'm stuck. That's another reality. There comes a time when you no longer should be tending, and there's a time to let go of that reality and move to something else. So it's really you understanding where you are at each point lets you know if you're on your frequency or a frequency that's been pre-designed for you. Okay? So I have some steps dealing with the cardinal points, and those steps kind of help you to understand how to move out of each place and get to your own place. Now, how you get to your frequency, this is only a template and a guide. How you get there is very personal. For you, it may just be rubbing a crystal and talking to a crystal. For others, it may be hugging a tree. For some, it may be martial arts, or playing an instrument. We're all going to get to different ways because we all have a different type of frequency. For me, it's teaching. If I don't teach, I will not self-actualize. I have to teach. I have to. You don't have to teach, maybe. You don't have to teach. I have to teach. I have to share information with people in order to actualize beyond what this is. Because my ultimate destination is not to be teaching, but this is my path of how I figure things out. So start with the things that bring you ecstasy. Those are the things that will bring you the light so you can see what's going on in your life. And then start with the things that take you deepest into your human corruption. Those are the things that will transform you. You need the combination of them both to find your own middle frequency.
So like what job or something, like a career, you pick something you really like?
Nah, that's just what you do for money. What do you do that you would consider to be your very breath? Without it, you just wouldn't be you. That's the problem. Okay? So the first step is acknowledging I don't know. And you said I don't know, right? Half the room would say the same thing. When you're totally invested in this reality, you never even get to the point where you ask that question of yourself. You don't even get that far. Because you're more obsessed with utilities. I gotta go to work tomorrow. I gotta pay this bill. First of the month is coming. Car insurance is due. You're obsessed with that. The pursuits that attempt the things we need to keep our human life. That's even down to the good healthy food you make sure that you buy. I gotta get my organic food. That's your utilities that keep you distracted from true purpose. What are the things that you do that are not for money? When you were a child, what are the things that just brought you into such a doofy state? You were so blissful.
I was a show jumper. I rode horses.
Okay. And a horse leaving the ground, what does that represent? Remember, I'm just going to say this. You're in a dream right now. So what do you do when you have a real interesting dream and you wake up from it? What's the first thing you do?
I remember it.
For what purpose?
Figure it out.
To figure it out. So figure out that part of the dream. Why were you into jumping horses? There was nothing but a dream. And it's full of symbology that you were supposed to decode that. A horse is what? It's a vehicle of travel, right? What is your body to your soul? A vehicle of travel. So I'm giving you a little hints. But you got to figure out, because if I tell you, it won't mean the same thing. But you gotta go to those things and you start decoding them. When I was a child, I used to collect yogurt caps. And you remember that? My brothers used to laugh at me, well, my older brother, you're so stupid, what are you doing? Stop! You know. Yeah, I was proud. But the thing is, that's the query, I guess. But the thing is, it was the colors. I was obsessed with putting these colors together and then taking them apart. Colors together, taking them apart. I had an obsession with chakras. Because these were the colors I used to see around people's bodies. So I used to look at the colors and try to figure out the combinations could I, because back then Dannon yogurt had this like cardboard top. It was before it was plastic and stuff. So it was like real bright colors. But I had an obsession with the chakras. That's what that was about. So I had to decode it. I mean, I didn't decode it as a child, But later I figured out, it's because I used to always see auras around people, but I thought everybody else saw them too. I didn't realize it was only me. So these yogurt caps, because they came in blue, yellow, green, it was the colors of the chakras. So these are the things you decode.
So everything that I understand about West African culture and spirituality is grounded in this idea that I am because we are. And you're part of the Yoruba tradition, so clearly you know that. And what it seems that I'm hearing is some kind of French existentialism. I'm an island and I'm going to do my own thing. So how do you reconcile those two?
Well, I am because we are, it's Ubuntu. You're dealing with the South. That comes out of Swaziland.
Yeah.
So really, we do our own thing because we are all Olodumare. Okay? So remember, Olodumare breathes in the breath of life to each individual, right? Why did Olodumare create more than one person? We have to start there. Because Olodumare has a various, and I'm assuming, you know Olodumare, right? Okay, that's good. The name Olodumare, O means owner, Odu means womb, and Mare means serpent. So when we say Olodumare, we're saying owner of the serpent's womb. Significant. Because in our Kemetic structure, we have Atum Mare, who's the same entity. Atum is where we get the word atom. Okay? Atum and Mare means serpent. So Atum meaning the beginnings, the atomic beginnings, the serpent representing evolution. The owner of the serpent's womb is the one who strives for evolution. Okay? Because the serpents, again, like the Caduceus, it's the evolving of the DNA. Okay? So the owner of the womb of the serpent, or what comes out of the womb, your next step. Right? So the understanding is that what came out of Olodumare in that breath of life, the next steps, us. So your job is, it's everyone do their own thing, but everyone do their own thing as assigned to you when you came out of the serpent's womb. Okay, Olodumare has to continue to perfect itself. Okay, in its perfecting of itself, it evolves. Perfection is not evolution, perfection is death. The constant movement towards perfecting is life, is evolution. Okay? And each one of us has a mission that adds up into that evolving mission. Yours may be to understand childbirth, let's say. To understand the whole concept of midwifery or just that whole process. Mine may be to share information and catalog and document people's reactions to when I say certain things. And then when we transition, we're both going to take this energy back up to a room, or down to a room, back to heaven. And that goes into the collective pool of the intelligence of Olodumare. But if you came here to do one thing, and that was just deemed great by society, and I said, I want to be like her, and I do the same thing, because it's great, then we're all bringing back the same information to the source. Problem. So the reality, yes, you are pivoting through your own free will, but it's predestined in a sense because you were sent with a question. Everybody got sent down to the planet with a question. God, Olodumare, had a question that Olodumare could not answer. in the form that Olodumare is. So Olodumare creates a negation of itself. You are a negation of the Most High. Okay? Because in order to create something, you have to extract from yourself. If I want to draw a picture right now, I have to take what's in my mind out and put it here. So I negate it from myself. So, but that picture may represent a question that I have. I wonder what this color would look like on the wall. Olodumare comes and says, I wonder what heartache feels like. I don't have a human heart. I wonder what human victory feels like. Pain, tragedy, all these different things that are dealing with the colors of life. When we consider the womb, right? The womb is a black place, it's dark, okay? That's Odu. Coming out, evolving through that serpent, we're coming into the light. So when we're dealing with concepts of the Most High, the Most High only functions in two paradigms, two polarities, positive and negative, light or dark. That's it. What lies in between the Most High polarity of light and the Most High's polarity of dark? Those two polarities give rise to man. And by man, I don't mean male, I mean man, woman, and child. Man is Mem, Alpha, Nun, woman, man, child. So the rise of what occurs in between is the colors. Okay, that's the yellow, the red, the green, the Orisha, that's the colors in between. And that's the colors that make up your life. But at the top is white, and at the bottom it's black. So at the top, everybody's blind, and at the bottom, everybody's blind. Okay. Things are seen in between. Okay? So you came here to fulfill a mission that answers that question that Olodumare had in the room, or has in the room. That's your life purpose. We call it a life purpose here, but it's really just an answer to a question. And it's really Olodumare just having a conversation with itself in another form. You looking in the mirror and saying, oh, this is what I look like when my spirit is wicked. And it comes out in my face. Now I look wicked. Okay. Write that down, bring it back up to a room. And that's how we evolve the information set.
You said something that you really love to find out yourself and something that you really hate, or something that really gets you.
The bliss, the ecstasy of your blissfulness is what brings you into the enlightenment of being able to see yourself. That's when you can truly see. You have the ability of circumspection at that point, which is Shango's realm. It's your corruption and your depths into humanity takes you into Eshu's realm. That's the dark energy. That's where your transformation occurs. You're transformed by human corruption, but you're enlightened by spiritual ecstasy. And it's the middle point which shows you what your purpose is. That's what you pivot on.
I was wondering, we know throughout the years, let's say in the last 15 years, there's been a lot of movies they've been putting out as far as the woman being the hero, kicking butt,
Sure.
Angelina Jolie. And that's a two-part question. Do you think the powers that be are doing that purposely in order to appease the the feminine energy that we got coming on the planet these days? In order to gain favor, because they're in control. Venus is gives you money, astrologically, and Jupiter, expands the money. But do you think that they're doing that in order to gain favor from the feminine principle in order to get some kind of power, since the goddess energy is going to be taken over?
No, they're doing that as an affront against the feminine energy. They're coming out with those movies so that they can recruit women into the military. Okay. That's what all those movies are about. So it's really an affront against true feminine power. Because what happens is something in the civilian world happens, right? Like her boyfriend cheats on her or something. And then she gets upset, she cuts all the hair, they always cut all the hair off. Cuts all the hair off, and she walks by her recruitment side, and she goes in crying. And she goes to or she goes to outer space, or she takes some job somewhere in the bush or something that she was afraid to take before. And then she goes and then she toughens up, she gets buff, she even starts beating up on men. She's doing all these different things she wasn't doing in the civilian world. So really it's an attack on the front on true feminine power, what true feminine energy is. And it really is just a social thing to get women into the military.
I'm just going to make a statement, and you just tell me, where to go with it. Because I've noticed there's been a lot of, soy put in foods, like soy lecithin and everything. And I've noticed that in those same foods, years ago, I said about
You're asking about the feminization of men.
Right, because I think they're kind of terraforming men's bodies, in order, so when that feminine energy does come down, it has something feminine to attach to.
No.
In order to,
Because it's a dual thing. Not only are the men being feminized, the women are being masculinated.
Right.
So we can keep everyone outside of their gender assignment talents.
Right.
Now, if I strive to be like a woman, or I begin to terraform my own form like a woman, it's going to be an internal frustration.
Right.
Because I can't be a woman. So I'm going to always wake up every day with this frustration. Okay? But also, I'm going to be negating the talents and the gift that came with my gender assignment,
Right.
which are directly related and linked to me fulfilling my purpose here on the planet.
Right.
So that keeps everyone running around in circles, not actually doing anything.
And being susceptible to control.
They're already engaged at that point. You've already given in.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
So they match.
With that, we're going to need to close out. We're on a tight bit here with these folks. Yes.